We were talking about the three types of tables which are present in 80386 system, right? The global descriptor table, local descriptor table, and interrupt descriptor table. And at that time, I was talking about the memory structure, right? It was actually very in detailed discussion that we had in last session, and it was not really part of our syllabus, but to understand how data structures are basically seen by the programmer, right? So that why I tried to visualize it, right, in front of you on board. So here, three types of tables are there: global descriptor table, local descriptor table, and interrupt descriptor table. Everyone should keep this these names, and in addition to that, their sizes also we should remember. Right now, when we are talking about the descriptor table, that was when I say it is a table, so it is a data structure which is present, and what it holds. So that was also discussed. It holds the descriptor. Right now, here in the second line, we discussed that all tables are variable in length. So we can program, right? We can decide how much size of memory we need to allocate for a particular table, and that is based on the entries that we want to have it in that particular table, right? So here, whatever the descriptors which we want, those are called as entries in respective tables, right? Each descriptor is of 8 bytes. Right. So minimum of 8 bytes. So minimum of 8 byte size is required for any of the descriptor tables. Right. So why minimum of 8 byte? That was also discussed, because at least one entry should be there. If you are creating any table, then in that table at least one entry should be there. So, and one entry means 8 bytes, and maximum of 64K, because we can have a total up to 8192 entries. So 8192 into 8. So that was also calculated. Now, the interesting point when we discussed last time about the index part, right? Index field in the selector. So upper 13 bits of the selector are basically used as an index, and it is scaled by 8. Now, all of you can do an exercise on notebook, right? So if I show you something, right? Whenever you're having some number, right? And if you are having if you insert 10 bit, right, 10 bit on the LSB position, right? So ultimately, what exactly you are doing? You are shifting that number towards the left side, right? So in this operation, what exactly happening with the magnitude of number, that you can analyze, right? So all of you should do this particular exercise. So I am doing parallelly on Notepad, right? So I am opening the Notepad, and here I am writing one binary number. Right, and this binary number, you can see, see, this is the binary number that I'm going to type, right? 0, 0, 0, 0, then 0, 0, 1, 1. Right. This is a binary number. Now, what is the magnitude of this number? So anyone can calculate easily. So in magnitude, I will write it as 3. Right. Now, I'm shifting it towards left side by 1 bit. So ultimately, we are inserting 0 here on the LSB position. So what is the magnitude of this number? So it is 6. All right. Now, I'm again shifting it towards left. Right. So 0, 0, 0, 0. Then 1, 1, 0, 0. So what is the magnitude of this number? So it is 12. Right, in decimal I'm writing. Now what is the relation between these numbers 3, 6 and 12? So every time when you are shifting a number towards left, it is getting multiplied by 2. Right. Now when we are talking about scaling of any of the numbers, right, any of the number by 8. So by 8 means how many times it should be multiplied by 2? When we are saying that it is scaled by 8. So 8, what is the relation there? How many times it should be shifted towards left? And what is the scale operation, right? When we say scaled by 8, scale by 8. So what is this term scale? Scaling factor that we discussed in addressing mode as well. So scaling is nothing but it is multiplied by 8. So when we say multiply by 8, so it is 2 raised to 3, right? So 2 raised to 3. So ultimately we have to multiply that number by 2 3 times. So when and what is that relation? When we are shifting any number by 1 bit towards left, it is equals to the multiply by 2. So 3 times when you shift that particular number towards left, so ultimately it is scaled by 8. So first time when I scaled it by first time when I scale it, it is becoming 6. Then second time it is becoming 12, and then third time 0 0 0, then 1 1 0 0 0, and this is becoming 24 in decimal, right? 24 in decimal. And if I write in hex, here you can see I can write 0ch here, and here this number I can write it as 18h. All right. So for your understanding, I am writing it in hex value as well. Right. Now, whenever we are handling these numbers, right, in computer, or everything happens in hex numbers, number system. That means binary, right? So decimals are not used, right? So whenever we are shifting and all these operations are actually happening in binary, right? And binary, we know that we can easily convert it to hex. So in computer system, generally the hex number systems are used, right? Maximum time hex numbers are used. All right. So here you can see whenever we are talking about scaling by 8, so this is the number, right? Here, this is the number which is scaled by 8. So what was the initial number? So here you can write this was the original index, right? So index was what? It was 3, and which is scaled by 8. So 3 into 8, so that becomes 24. All right. So this understanding is important when we are trying to locate particular entry in the table. So every index value will be scaled by 8. Now here you can see what if you visualize visualize the difference here. Here ultimately the index value will be having this is the index value, original index value, and will be having lower 3 bits as 0 0 0 after scaling it by 8. All right, after scaling it by 8. Now if I show you the segment selector from where we are getting this 13-bit index value, then at that time you will understand that what exactly is happening inside the processor. This is very in-depth discussion that we are doing, but ultimately it will be helpful to understand what exactly is happening, how it is actually accessing particular descriptor. All right. Now the tables associate there are 3 registers which we discussed, right, which are having associated to the tables, right? So tables and the registers are there. So when we are talking about global descriptor table, then it is having GDTR. Local descriptor table, then we have LDTR. Interrupt descriptor table, we have IDTR. All right. Now we discussed about this. Okay, so this was the point where we will continue, right? Global descriptor table. Now, what global descriptor table is? Now, the name itself indicates that it is a global table, right? Global table. So, for all tasks, this table will be accessible, right? For all tasks, this particular table will be accessible, right? So, global table, it contains descriptors which are possibly available for all of the tasks in the system. Right, so there will not be any restriction, right? Every task will be able to access this global descriptor table. So there are GDT can contain any type of segment descriptor except for descriptors which are used for servicing the interrupts. So the descriptors which are possible, right? We will be talking about the classification of descriptors as well. But here the descriptors which are associated to the interrupt servicing, right? So here interrupt and trap descriptors are there. Those are basically used to give service to the interrupts. Those are not available in the GDT. So interrupt and trap descriptors we cannot have it in the GDT. Getting this, and other descriptors we can define it in GDT. All right. Now, every Intel 80386 system contains a GDT, right? So for every system there will be a GDT. So one GDT will be there, right? And this GDT will be containing code and data segments, right? Generally, it contains code and data segments used by operating systems, the task segment task state segments, and the descriptors for LDTs. Now, this LDT is very interesting that we are going to cover it in next. LDT is basically a local descriptor table for every individual task, right? And the descriptors associated to these LDTs are to be stored in GDT. This is what the linking, right? So whenever new task is getting created, then its descriptor will be created or will be available in the GDT. So through that particular descriptor, we can access the local descriptor table, right? So here the descriptors associated to LDTs will be available in the GDT, right? Now in a GDT structure, if you see, the first entry of GDT will not be used, right? So the first lot of GDT corresponds to the null selector and it is not used. So whatever the first entry means first 8 bytes, right? Always remember, when we are talking about the entry or any descriptor, it will be of 8 byte size. Never forget this. All right. Then we call that entry as a null descriptor, right? We call it as a null descriptor. So this null descriptor is corresponding to the it is a basically it is a null pointer, right? So the null selector defines a null pointer. Null pointer means these values will be zeros. All right, and that is a mandatory part of your system, right? 80386. Now we are talking about the local descriptor table. Now one point I highlighted, for every 386 system we will be having one GDT, right? But for every task which we create may have LDT, right? May have LDT. So there may be few tasks which may be only using global descriptor table. So again, it is not mandatory, but depending on the requirement of isolating the data, right, from other tasks, it is your system creates the local descriptor table for every task. So LDT contains those descriptors which are associated to the given task, right? So for every task, there will be some code and data segments, and then if you don't want, if you want to have a separate, table for those descriptors, then we can create the LDT. Getting this? So here, by doing this, what exactly we are doing? The descriptors which are stored in the given LDT are only accessible to that task only. Other tasks cannot access. Right, as per our knowledge or as per our understanding, all descriptors in GDT are accessible to all tasks. But when we are talking about the LDT, right? When we are talking about the LDT descriptors are only accessible to the given task, right? And then these LDTs will be created for every task, right? Then generally operating systems are designed so that each task has a separate LDT. So that I told you. Right. So LDT may contain only code, data, stack, task gate, and call gate descriptors. Right. So these are the different descriptors which we can create. Right. And these descriptors are associated to your current task. All right. So here, when we are talking about the LDT, then code, data, stack, task gate, and call gate descriptors are getting created for the given task. All right. Then LDTs provide a mechanism for isolating. So what is the main purpose here? So isolating the data or isolating the segments, right, from the other tasks or from the rest of the operating system. So LDT provides a mechanism for isolating a given task code and data segments from the rest of operating system, right? But here, while the GDT contains descriptors for segments which are common to all tasks. So what is the requirement in our system? We will create such descriptors which are common to all tasks in GDT. But if we want to, if there are local tables or local descriptors segments are to be created for a given task, then those will be created in LDT, so that these descriptors will not be accessible to other tasks. Right. A segment cannot be accessed by a task if its segment descriptor does not exist in either current LDT or the GDT. Now here, This line indicates the way by which we can access the segment, right? So if you want to access any segment, right, so what is the requirement? That segment descriptor must be available at, in current LDD. If it is not there in current LDD, then it should be there in the GDD. Getting this? So any segment that your program trying to access, if it is available in the current LDD or it is available in GDD, then and then it is possible to access that segment. So this provides both isolation, right? So isolating means for every individual task there will be a local segments. So those are not accessible to the other tasks. So isolation is there. In addition to that, protection is also provided, right, for the task segments while still allowing global data to be shared among the tasks. So whatever the global data that we want to store, right, those are basically stored in a segment whose descriptors are there in the GDD. Getting me? So here the isolation and protection will be made available, right, for all the tasks which we are creating in our system. All right. Now, let me tell you about the situation, right? Many of you must have come across this particular situation in when we are working with the programs. See the there are, whenever you are trying to access system level functions, right, and whenever you are accessing the pointers and all, right, what type of error all of you are facing? Many of you must have faced this particular issue while executing the program. It creates particular error. What is that? It is associated to the segmentation. Anyone? When you are accessing the segments, what type of error you are getting? Anyone got the segmentation error? Am I audible?
Yes, sir.
Segmentation fault.
Segmentation error core dumped is what the error is.
Yeah. Now, what exactly is happening here when these segmentation errors are coming, right? So, whenever our program, right, we are at user level, when we are trying to access or trying to modify the data which is not really available for us, right? And if our program tries to access those values, then in that case, your kernel gives those these type of errors, right? So whenever we have a mishandling of the pointer or the pointer locations, values, and all. So in that case, this type of error is displayed by your kernel. All right. So in that case, where you can see these descriptors are basically used for checking. So when we talk about the protection and all, I will talk about which fields of 80386 are involved in defining or deciding the protection or the privilege level required for accessing particular data. All right. So here the LDTs are basically, I told you that these are the tables which are associated or these are the tables which holds the descriptors associated to the given task. All right. And the third table that I was talking about is interrupt descriptor table. This is a very interesting table, right? And those who studied 8086 structure, right, those are aware about the IVT, right? So all of you can make note of this IVT, right? Because this term is associated to what IDT I am talking about, all right? So you can explore about the IVT, right? Now IVT is basically the interrupt vector table in 8086 environment, right, and which is having fixed location which starts at 0th address. Now this IDT is a table, right, which is having all these descriptors which are used to give service to the interrupts, various interrupts. And in 80386 environment, we like your 8086, we have up to 256 interrupts. How many interrupts are there? Total up to 256 interrupts we can have. And to provide service to the every individual interrupt, then we should have those that much interrupt service routine. So up to 256 interrupt service routines we can have. And these interrupt service routines are basically the programs and their entry points, right? The entry points of those interrupt service routines are basically stored in the IDT. Getting this in the form of descriptors. So these descriptors will be pointing, right? Whenever we are trying to access the descriptor which is there in the IDT, right? In that case, it will point to the interrupt service routine, right? The final target is interrupt service routine. And when we are accessing the interrupt service routine, so it will be executed to give service to that particular interrupt. All right. So here, as I told you, total 256 entries, up to 256 entries that we can have. So ultimately here you can easily calculate the size of your interrupt descriptor table. So maximum size of interrupt descriptor table. So can anyone tell me how much size is required, maximum size that we can have for interrupt service route, interrupt descriptor table? How much maximum size that we can have for interrupt descriptor table? Can anyone calculate? How many descriptors in IDT are possible? Up to 256. So how much is the size required? It's a very simple question, right? And I'm expecting answers, right? Don't simply attend the sessions. How much is the size? Maximum size? Wait fast. What is wrong with your team members? I don't know. Like all of you are not simply attending the sessions, but no one wants to give the response, and you are wasting my time, right? Chetna Thorat, unmute yourself. Chetna Thorat, unmute yourself. Chetna Thorat, removed. Piyush Shingle. Piyush Shingle.
Yes, sir.
See, I am talking about the IDT, right, interrupt descriptor table, right? And I told you 256 entries are possible, right? 256 entries are possible in the IDT. And in 256, when I'm talking about the 256 entries, in that case, what should be the size required for IDT? Yes, Piyush. In the start of my session, I told that each descriptor will be of 8 bytes.
Yes.
So to accommodate 256 descriptors, how much size is required? How will you calculate?
32. 2048.
2048. So simple answer, right? And what others are doing, right? Or all of you are just simply, right? Last time one of your friend was attending the cricket match, right? He was on the cricket match ground and attending the lecture. Vaishnavi, is there any question or wanted to answer? Vaishnavi Bade? Vaishnavi, are you there? Vaishnavi Bade? I think she left. She raised the hand. All right. So total 2048 bytes of size is required for your IDT. All right. So when you are talking about the IDT, so IDT is basically having maximum of 256 entries only. All right, maximum of 256 entries only. So up to, what is this, the first line in the value? These are up to 256 interrupt service routines. So entries, descriptors for 256 interrupt service routines, right? But in addition to this, there is one restriction, right? So how much minimum entries that are expected in IDT? So that is given in my third line, right? So the contents in IDT are given in the second line, right? IDT may contain only task gates, interrupt gates, and trap gates. So what is the purpose of IDT? Its purpose is very simple. All descriptors which are associated to access the interrupt service routines are to be there in the IDT. No data and code segment descriptors are expected in this IDT. Remember this, right? Then IDT should be at least 256 bytes. So minimum 256 bytes. So can anyone calculate if I am saying that at least 256 bytes means how many descriptors minimum it should have? So here in the same line the answer is there. So at least 32 entries which are Intel reserved, those are to be available, right? So minimum interrupt descriptors which we should have are of 32. Right? So minimum 32 are to be defined, right? And then user defined interrupt service routine you can define above this 32, right? So 33 onwards you can assign those numbers. Right. Now, many times, like if you talk about INT ATH, right? INT ATH is basically the interrupt that many of you may be aware about, right? So this is basically equals or equivalent to the syscall in your 64-bit architecture. All right. So here, this 80 is basically above this 32. So here you can see from 0 to 31, you can have this interrupt Intel reserved, right? So these are predefined interrupts which we will be having in our system, right? So here you can see every interrupt used by the system must have an entry in IDT. So this is mandatory part. So if you want that interrupt service routine is to be defined and it should be accessed after receiving the interrupt, then its descriptor must be there in the IDT. There is no alternate way, right? And the IDT entries are referenced via, so there are different options, right, by which we can access the entries within this IDT interrupt descriptor table. So first one is INT instruction. So we have this INT software interrupt, right, INT instruction itself. So with this INT you can specify the type number. Right, so whatever the type number is there, that you can specify. So INT ATH, INT, then 21H. So there are ways. INT is the instruction by which we can access those interrupt service routines. In addition to this software interrupt INT instruction, we have external interrupt vectors. So external interrupts means what? The hardware interrupts. So whenever we talk about the pin functions, right, we know that we have two pins, INTR and NMI, right? So these two pins, on these two pins we receive these external interrupts. And then exceptions. Now exceptions are basically the errors by which are created due to the execution of your instructions, you know? So here the hardware interrupts are there and then the exceptions are there. Right, so these are the three ways by which we can access the entries in IDT. Right, and what is the purpose of accessing IDT? The final purpose of accessing IDT is to provide service to the interrupt. Right, so that is IDT, as IDT holds these descriptors, right, which are basically locating the interrupt service routines. Getting this. So ultimately, we are accessing this interrupt descriptor table to provide interrupt service or to provide the service to the given interrupt. All right. So this is what the interrupt descriptor table is. Now this is the interesting diagram. Here you can easily identify whatever the point that I was talking about. All right. Now on the left side of this screen, you can see the GDT is specified. Now what this GDT, I told you, we have one GDT, right? So only one GDT we have. And now here you can see the register is mentioned, that register is GDTR. Now this GDTR points to the starting or base of your table, right? And it is expanding in up direction, right? Here you can see the lower address is here and the higher addresses are at the top. Bro, on the right side, these numbers which are given are indicating the descriptor number, right? Descriptor number. So here the number n is given, then n plus 1 is there, n plus 2 is there, n plus 3 is there, and then m. M indicates that is the last descriptor in the table. Now, what can anyone tell me what will be the maximum value of this m? What will be the maximum value of m with reference to the GDT? I'm talking about with reference to the GDT. And your immediate answer indicates that you are really attending my session. So what is, and what are the values that I highlighted from the morning, right? From the starting of my lecture, I was talking about this value. So what is the maximum value that we can have for m? Can anyone answer fast? Fast means immediate. I am expecting immediate answer. Can anyone answer? Who will give answer? Saurabh Chintawar, are you there? Saurabh
Yes,
Chintawar?
sir. Yes, sir.
Yes. So you are there in the lecture from morning, right?
Yes.
So what is the value that I'm talking about? How many entries are possible in, how many descriptors we can put it in the GDT?
About 65K.
64K was the size that I was talking about.
Yes.
How many entries, how many descriptors we can store? That is the question. Each descriptor is of 8 bytes. So if you divide 64K by divided by 8, it will give you the answer. And this calculation I'm expecting everyone should do, right? And everyone should be comfortable with this calculation, right? All of you are genius students, right? I know your feedback. So I'm expecting that everyone should be attending. 8,100.
92.
92 is the value, bro. So 8192 is the number of descriptors that we can have, and our first descriptor number starts with 0. So value of this m that I'm asking is 8191. All right. So my first unused null descriptor here, this is my null descriptor as I told you in the earlier slides. So this is null descriptor. So this is descriptor 0, right? And then we are increasing, then 1, 2, 3 like that. And then we will reach up to m, right? It is not mentioned 8191 here because this I can have any one, right? I can have 100, I can have 200 descriptor depending on the system requirement. But maximum value that I can have is 8191. All right. So all of you should remember this, and you should be, attentive by calculating these things. And if you while discussion only, when you work on these values, then you will be really comfortable, right? Now, what about the LDDR? LDDR is also the pointer register, right? Local descriptor table register that points to the base of your local descriptor table. Here also, we have this first entry, then n plus 1, 2 plus 3, and then last one is m. So for LDD as well, m can have up to 8191. All right. So 0 to 8191, we can have the entries, right, descriptors in this table. All right. Right. Now, what about the IDT? Right side, we have this structure of IDT, right? This IDT base is basically pointed by your IDTR, right? So this is whatever this diagram is there, 0 to 31, that indicates IDT base, and then 0 to 15, that indicates the size of your IDT, right? And total 48-bit calculation, 32 plus 60, right? Here in GDDR case also, I told you that it is 48-bit register. LDDR, I told you it is a 16-bit register, and it is a selector part. And the automatically loaded part will be holding the base address of your local descriptor table. Now here in case of IDT, here you can see gate for, so you can easily read gate for interrupt hash 0 is given, right? Gate for interrupt hash 1. So these are the type numbers, and each gate, right, each entry here is of 8 bytes. Again, equivalent to what descriptors I was talking about in case of GDT and LDT. Same structure is here, bro. And then here you can see like that we have gate for interrupt hash n. So can anyone immediately respond me what will be the maximum value of n that I can have in case of IDT? In the last slide only I discussed about it. So what will be the value of n in case of IDT? In case, how much? 204. How much?
2048.
2048. Okay, 2048 is basically the number of bytes that we calculated. All right.
256.
So again, 256 is the maximum number of gates that we can have in IDT. All right. So this is correct one. We are close to the answer, right? 256 is the number of gates that we can have in IDT, and then my first gate in number is 0. So maximum value that I can have here, n will be equals to 255. All right. Right. So 0 to 255, that gives me total 256 descriptors, right, or the gates. All right. So here you can see in case of IDT, right, the gates are given, right, gate for like this. So here if I rewind and if I show you, here 3 possible entries are given in the second line, right? Task gates, interrupt gates, and trap gates, right? So all entries are basically having gates, right, in IDT. So that's why gate for 0, 1, 2, like that, up to n. And n is variable, right? Minimum 31 I can have, but then later on I can have up to 100, 200. Maximum is 255. Value for n. All right. So is this